Dov for the camera setup and for the lunch pickup and delivery. Thank you very, very much, Dov. Okay, so actually the weather outside helps to focus our point that Tu B'Shvat Higia Chag Le'ilanot, right? So Tu B'Shvat is the new year for the trees, right? And it takes place, we'll soon see different opinions, but we celebrate, I say to you, see right over here. We celebrate it on the 15th day of Shvat. Now, normally here in Southern California, we don't necessarily feel the incongruity of that, right? In that it's usually pretty nice weather over here. But go to the East Coast or watch the evening news, and they are blanketed in snow and ice and hail and all these other wonderful, wonderful weather patterns that we are blessed to not have to deal with on a consistent basis. And you wonder, what is the idea of Tu B'Shvat? What is this holiday of the trees? And why do we make a big deal about it? We'll soon see that the Mishnah teaches us that there are different dates that are counted as New Year dates for us. We're all familiar with Rosh Hashanah, of course, the Jewish New Year, which is the first of the month of Tishrei, usually coming out sometime in September. But there are actually 4 Rosh Hashanah, but the others are not made much of a deal about. Yet Tu B'Shvat, for some reason, is. So let's get started on the sources, and let's take a look at the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, Mishnah 1:1. Tu B'Shvat is one of the New Years on the Jewish calendar. The Mishnah there says, Arba'a Rashi Shanim. There are 4 New Years. Be'echad b'Nisan, the first of the month of Nisan. Rosh Hashanah l'Melachim v'L'Regalim. That is the Rosh Hashanah for kings, meaning that when we are calculating the tenure of a king, or at least of a Jewish king, if he started, we don't calculate a year as in 365 or 354, or the calendar date of his coronation coming around again. But rather, every first of Nisan, that's a click of a new year. So he was coronated in Adar, the month right before Nisan. Comes the first of Nisan, he's starting his second year, even though his first year might have lasted just a few weeks. The festivals, right? Our festival cycle begins with the festival of the month of Nisan, which is Pesach, Passover. Right? We don't make a big deal out of the first of Nisan. On the first of Elul, that's the new year for the tithing of animals. And we'll discuss that. That tithing is a fundamental concept. We'll see the understanding behind it of taking 1/10 of what we have, or actually keeping 9/10 of what Hashem gave us, and delivering the other 1/10 to those that Hashem intended when He gave us that 10th. When He gives us what He gives us, 9/10 is meant to be for us, and 1/10 is meant to be distributed, and we are given the ability to choose, the discretion to choose to whom we want to give it, as long as they fit into the requisite categories. So the first of Elul is the tithing of the animals. So 1/10 of one's animals of that year. Well, what determines animals of that year? So we need a calendar point where any animals that were born within from this date to this date, they can all be put together to be tithed, whereas from before that date and after that date, that will already be for another year. That is the first of Elul, and once again, we don't make a big deal out of that. Rabbi Elazar Shimon, they say this is on the first of Tishrei, Be'echa b'Tishrei. On the first of Tishrei, Be'echa b'Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah l'Shanim. That we know. That we have a holiday. That is the Rosh Hashanah we're familiar with. On the first of Tishrei, that is the new year for the year. Ulishmitin, for calculating the sabbatical years. Yovelot, the jubilee years. Linatia, Ulayirakot, and for planting and different vegetables that are growing. The Echad B'Shvat, on the first day of Shvat, the Mishnah teaches us, that is the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. That is the Rosh Hashanah for the tree. K'divrei Beit Shammai, according to the opinion of Beit Shammai. Beit Hillel says, B'chamisha asar bo. No, it's not on the 1st of Shvat, it is on the 15th, known as Tet Vav, pronounced as 2 Bishvat. So that is the new year for the trees. What does that mean, the new year for the trees? So once again, when it comes to tithing, you have to tithe that year's fruits together. I can't take from last year's or from next year's onto this year's. What determines the year? Oh, the date is 2 B'Shvat of this year until 2 B'Shvat of next year. As we see from the Torah in source number 2, Deuteronomy, Devarim, Aser ta'aser, right? You shall, Aser ta'aser, you shall tithe at kol tfuat zaracha, all of the crops, the seed crops, hayotzei hasadeh, that the field produces, shana b'shana, each and every year. That you shall tithe that. The Gemara interestingly says, aser ta'aser. So aser means to tithe, osher means wealth. So the Gemara says, aser ta'aser, tithe, you shall tithe. Actually, aser kedei shetit asher, tithe in order that you will become wealthy. And interestingly enough, the Talmud learns out from a pasuk that we're not allowed to test God. We can't say, God, I'm going to do this mitzvah, but you better pay up. You better do this for me. And if you don't do this for me, then I'll really give it to you. Or I'm not going to do anything else anymore. Then I'm out. Right? We're not allowed to test God. But based on the pasuk, ubachanuni na bazot, the pasuk actually says, test me please on this. The one area where we are allowed to test God is when it comes to maaser. If we tithe, if we give 1/10, nowadays when most of us are not growing all that much, but we give 1/10 of our earnings post-tax, take-home earnings, we give 1/10 of our earnings, then that's an area we can test God that He will send to us a bracha, ad b'lidai, until you'll become tired from saying die. Okay, so very good. So 2 B'Shvat is the new year for the trees. And that's the date when we decide how, right, that's the starting point for tithing. I don't see all the excitement. Don't you hear? That is the time of the new year for the trees. That's the starting point of the tithing.
Wow.
Thank you, Chaya Rivka. Right? So why do we make such a big deal out of this? It seems somewhat technical, somewhat boring, perhaps, right? You know, 2 B'Shvat, or the kids, all right? Like, why are we making this big deal out of 2 B'Shvat? Well, before we get there, we'll see that in source number 4, but in source number 3. So why is 2 B'Shvat the determining date of the new year for the trees? Right? What's happening? What's happening with the growth of the trees? What's happening with the trees that 2 B'Shvat we say, oh, that's the new year for the trees? So the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud in Rosh Hashanah tells us, Ilan shechantu peirotav kodem chamisha asar b'Shvat mitaseh l'shana shavra achar chamisha b'Shvat mitaseh l'shana haba. I'm sorry, this is still technical. We'll see the other Gemara in just a moment. Well, actually, we'll jump up for a second, right? So it all depends. When did the tree blossom? If it blossomed after 2 B'Shvat, that's the year. Prior to 2 B'Shvat, that's the year. So we have to see when did the tree blossom vis-a-vis 2 B'Shvat. Let's skip number 4 for a moment. We'll come back in a moment and look at source number 5. Rosh Hashanah le'ilan. Again, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah tells us, the Talmud tells us, that's the new year for the tree. My Tama, what's the reason? It doesn't look all that favorable or all that pleasant outside for the trees budding. At that point, most of the rains of the year, at least in Israel, have passed. V'adayin rov tkufa mi bachutz. And most of the winter has passed. Rashi explains, Shekvar avar rov yimot hageshamim shuzman revia. Most of the rainy season has passed. That's the time of the saturation. Va'ala hasaraf be'ilanot. The sap is starting to rise in the trees. What will enable the tree to blossom and to produce fruit? The rising of the sap. The nimtzu perot chontin me'ata. From this point on, the blossoms, the fruit, will begin to bud. So therefore, in that frozen tree in Vermont, in the midst of this crazy snowstorm that they are having right now as we are speaking, the sap is starting to rise. We'll come back to that in a moment. Let's see a beautiful, beautiful idea from Moshe Feinstein. That's source number 4. I said a reason for the joy and for our celebration of the New Year for trees, right? Because we were wondering, very good, it's a technical, somewhat bland, boring idea that, this is the date of the New Year for the trees in terms of tithing. So what? So if Moshe shares as follows, and this reason which applies only to the laws of tithes, which we may not separate from one year's produce on that of another year, right? That we saw from Deuteronomy, from Devarim, that each year we have to separate the tithes for that year on that year. The tribe of Levi was not given an inheritance. One of the 12 tribes, the Levites, were not given an inheritance. They were not given a portion in the land of Israel. So how then was it divided amongst 12 tribes?
Because one of the
Good. Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Menashe. When we're not counting Levi, we count Yosef as 2, his 2 sons, Ephraim and Menashe. The rest of the Jewish people received their portion. So it's not that they did not receive a portion. They had a portion, but it was given out to the rest of the Jewish people. Thus, the tithes that we give them, that we give to the Kohen or to the Levi, all from the tribe of Levi, are not merely a charitable gift from the rest of the nation. It's not from my largesse that I'm giving you that which is mine, but it's an obligatory payment. I'm paying you that which is yours. Like a rental payment. I've got your land. And therefore a sharecropper, if you're on my land, you work it and you give me a portion. We are working the land. Part of it belongs to the Levites. So we've got to make our rental payment. But since it is a sort of obligation wherein a person can give it to whomever he wants, there's no one who can sue for it or take it from the field when the owner does not give it. We mentioned before, it's my discretion which Levite or Kohen to give it to. So no one can come to me and knocking on my door saying, Ciner, time to pay up. A person might make a mistake and think, this is a gift that I so magnanimously that I am giving. Therefore, there are some people who are negligent in giving tithes. And if a person gives, there's room to fear he might delay giving them, out of fear that his crops might not grow the following year. I don't know what's going to be next year. I might lose some of the money that he invested in plowing and planting. My crops do grow well the following year. I'm afraid that in the 3rd year, they will not grow well. All right? Some people, it's never a good time for them, in their minds, to give tzedakah. I can't now, the kids are young, right? I have to put away for college. They're in college now. They just got married. I have to save for the weddings. I have to help them buy their houses. Pretty soon I'm going to be retiring, going on a fixed income, right? So a person could always rationalize, and it's never a good time. This can continue until the end of his life, when his time suddenly comes and he will no longer be able to fulfill the precept and pay off his debt. His debt, what he owes. Therefore, the Torah commands us not to take the tithes from the produce of 1 year from that of the next, so that a person will be compelled to give the tithes every single year, and will thus understand that it is obligatory. And once again, most of us are not farmers in the land of Israel, so we're not giving that type of tithe, but we do have the obligation to tithe our monetary post-tax income, and to give that.
Right.
Nowadays as well, a person must know that the world is truly created for all people. Everyone has an equal share in it. So why is one person wealthy and another person poor? God has given the portion of the poor one to the wealthy one. Consequently, it's not really his. Or at least 1/10 of it is not his. If he fulfills the requirement that God placed upon him and gives charity to the poor, whose portion he has received, then he will acquire his own portion, and it'll be truly his. But since no one can lay claim to the charity, he might push off the giving of the portion of charity from his profits. He might suffer a loss the next day, or the next year, or the next decade, until suddenly his time comes, and he will see that he never paid his dues, and he's really lived on theft throughout his life. Therefore, a person must learn from the laws of tithe. He should at least not delay from 1 year to the next. Every year he should calculate how much charity he owes and give that amount to charity. If he makes a weekly and monthly accounting, is even better. Certainly a daily accounting. This is a lesson we learn from Tu B'Shvat, when the remainder becomes ours, so we can ask God to give us, all the Jewish people, more and more. Yes, Chaim.
I just wanted to say that the laws of
Tithing?
tithing,
Maser?
the laws of tithing are now, today, they haven't stopped. But the laws of the Levites, no Levite has to do a certain tithing, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Well,
Even in the land of
yes
Israel?
and no. In the land of Israel,
Uh-huh.
A person must tithe all of the produce that is grown there. Okay?
If you're a farmer.
Well, when you go to the fruit market in Machane Yehuda, for example, or any fruit market, right? Whereas here we go to Wholesome Choice and we don't need any sort of kosher certification on the raw fruit, right? All raw fruit is kosher, right? However, in Israel, you do need to have kosher certification that shows that it has been properly tithed.
Okay.
Now, the reason we need to tithe in Israel, it gets a little bit complicated, but very briefly, if the food is not tithed, it's called tevel, and one is not allowed to consume it. So what one must do is separate the tithes. What does one do with the tithes that they separate? That is less constricting nowadays. Why is that? Well, a part of it goes to the Kohen. But a Kohen, who really knows who a Kohen is? Prove to me that you're a Kohen. Right? And even if you are a Kohen, you're not really allowed to eat it because we all have become defiled. All the Kohanim have come in contact with people who have died, with deceased bodies, funerals, hospitals, wherever it might be. So therefore, they're not allowed to eat it. So we take off just a minimal amount and we dispose of it respectfully to make sure no one eats it. The part that goes to the Levite, who's to say you're a Levite? Prove to me you're a Levite. The part that goes to the poor, right? So that one can give to poor people, right? But basically, the part that needs to be in Jerusalem, nowadays there's no Beit HaMikdash, so we redeem it on. It gets very, very complicated. Just very interestingly, so the large companies like Tenuva, who tithe, right, the massive amounts of produce that are grown before it hits the market, right? So if they're going to take off and dispose of that truma, it's going to be a tremendous waste. But what can we do? No one's allowed to eat it. So what do? So what I was told is that they made Kohanim the owners of the zoo in Israel. Now, not only can a Kohen eat truma, his animals are allowed to eat truma. But by animals, there's no ritual impurities. There's no problem that they're impure. So all of that goes to the zoo, and the rhinos and the hippos, who eat quite a bit of produce on a daily basis, right? They are taken care of. Now, but Rav Moshe's idea doesn't really explain, okay, so that's a lesson by any of the tithes. It's a beautiful, important lesson about tithing in general, but it's not specific to the tithing of the trees. So this lesson could have been taught to us by the first of Elul, the tithing of this, or the first of Tishrei, the tithing of that. It still hasn't explained why we make such a big deal about Tu B'Shvat in particular. So let's go to number 6. And again, focusing on what we saw in source number 5, that this is when the sap starts to move. The great masters of Musar is self-improvement, and Jewish thought derived many important insights from Tu B'Shvat, which always falls in the midst of winter, while the trees are totally bare of leaves, seemingly bereft of any sign of life. The fields are usually covered with snow, the white shrouds of winter. Yet when the special day arrives, a Techiyatz HaMesim, a literal resurrection of the dead begins. Something happens under the earth. Life-giving sap begins to work its way up through the trees to give them life, give them new life. This expresses itself in buds, blossoms, flowers, and eventually luscious fruits the trees will produce in the coming spring and summer. Man is compared to a tree of the field. At times it seems that he too is totally stripped of life, of any spiritual life, with little or no connection to God and His Torah. He feels cold, she feels cold, barren, disconnected, lifeless. Yet, what's called in Yiddish the Pinta L'Yid, that little spark of the Jew, the indestructible spark of one's godly soul, lies dormant under the surface. It waits for an opportunity to burst forth and flower with spiritual growth that can erase years and decades of apathy to a life of spirituality. One of the great Rebbes of Ger, the Chedushei Harim, explain when we make the blessing, Hashem is the Magen Avraham, is the shield of Abraham. So what does that mean, the shield of Abraham? He shielded Abraham. Okay, we're his descendants, so we're shielding Abraham, that's why we're here. He explains it, that Abraham was the one who discovered that spark of godliness in him and turned it into a fire, a flame, a burning flame that started our whole nation. Every single person has that spark inside of us. Hashem is Magen Avraham. He guards, He keeps that spark to make sure that it's never extinguished, that a Jew always has the possibility to connect in a deep, meaningful, resolute way.
Actually, Tu B'Shvat, in a sense, is a validating leap of faith.
Yeah.
Because nothing is blooming now. The trees are not budding yet.
Okay.
Nothing is visible yet. It's all
very nice.
So in a sense, it's a validation that yes.
Nice.
The seeds are there.
Yeah. And we can't just look at something and think that we understand,
right.
that we know what's going
on.
So often we'll look at a person and we might discount that person. Right? And we have no idea about who that person really, truly is and all that there is inside that person. Beautiful.
We don't see the potential.
Yeah. Rabbi Eliyahu Kitov, in the Book of Our Heritage. The Book of Our Heritage is an incredible 3-volume, at least in English, it's a 3-volume set that goes through the entire year, each month, and all that is involved in each month. It is required reading for those who are in a conversion class. And if only all the required reading for the conversion class would be required reading for all Jews, we would do that much better. Right? So he explains very beautifully, how is this Rosh Hashanah different than the other Rosh Hashanah? right? That it goes by without any recognition. This one is particularly connected to the praise of the land of Israel. On this day, the land renews its vigor to give forth produce, bear fruit, show its praiseworthiness. V'rov shvacha. So how about all the other tithing? Why the trees? Most praise of the land of Israel is al perot ha'ilan, are on the fruits of its trees. Right? Nemar yom she'ad me'eretz Yisrael mechadesh b'kochotea lotzi shmona v'davsha yom shel simcha li'Yisrael nechaleh oveh mitzapeha. The day upon which the land of Israel renews its vigor to bring forth its goodness and its sweetness is a day of joy for the Jewish people, for whom it is a heritage, a love, and a longing. Right? The classic, what is the classic praise of the land of Israel?
A land of fruit and honey.
Flowing. Right? With milk and honey. What's the honey we're referring to?
Date honey.
Date honey. Not bee honey. Date honey. It's trees. Therefore, the Magen Avram writes, he's one of the codifiers of halacha on Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law. There is a custom to eat fruit on Tu B'Shvat. But Tu B'Shvat noagin Ashkenazim laharbot b'minei perot shel ilanot. The Ashkenazic custom is to consume extra fruit on that day. Now, consuming that fruit is not simply consuming the fruit. The Bach explains, source number 9, why we should, indeed we do, request the ability to partake of the fruits of Israel. There is intrinsic holiness to the land of Israel. This holiness is not limited to the spiritual realm. The holiness actually manifests itself in a physical form as well. We always say that the spiritual takes on and permeates the physicality. The fruits that are nurtured from the earth of the land of Israel not only extract water and nutrients from the land, they extract the holiness of the land as well. When partaking of the fruits, we ingest physical nourishment as well as spiritual sustenance. Okay, let's go to number 11, the pre-Eitz Hadar, which is getting into a lot of the Kabbalistic teachings. Umori zal haya omer lechavein ba'achila peroteion letikun chet adam harishon. Wow. The very first sin. Well, what was the very first commandment of the Torah?
Do not eat from the tree.
Ah, you fell for my bait.
Fruitful and multiply, isn't it? No good?
Of all the things in the garden you can eat, but do not eat from
You
the
shall eat.
You shall.
Good. The first command was eat. Right? What did my grandmother say to me? Essen, mein Kind. Essen. Eat. What is our parent in the heavens? What's the first thing he said to his children? Eat. Enjoy. But there's one tree don't eat from. Meaning, recognize that this is my house. This is my garden. This is my world. But enjoy the gifts that don't forget it's a gift. How do you remember it's a gift? There's something that's off limits. It's not all for you. It's not all yours. But enjoy. But the first sin was eating from the Eitz Hadat. That one should have intention by eating the fruit to rectify the sin of Adam, who sinned in eating from the fruit of the tree. Although we have this intention throughout the year, this day has special potency for this intention, in that it is the new year for the fruit of the tree. In this we are able to awaken the upper spiritual lights that should shine with a brilliant light and to influence a great blessing and bounty upon the whole world. Therefore, before eating each fruit, one should mention its spiritual root, as mentioned in the Zohar and Tikkunim, in order to awaken their spiritual roots. So we're not, at least I'm not, so well versed in the spiritual roots of each fruit, but certainly what each of us can and should do Tu B'Shvat is Sunday night and Monday, make sure to eat fruit and make sure to make a good, heartfelt blessing on that fruit. Because the blessing that we make is really what corrects the sin of the Garden of Eden.
It should be fruits of
Right?
Israel, right?
Ideally, yes. Right? But the sin of eating from the Eitz Hadah, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the sin was not recognizing that it's God's world and God's garden and making sure to recognize and acknowledge that. Well, every time we make a bracha, a blessing, before we eat anything, that is our acknowledgement of God's being the master of this world, God having given that to us.
Do we make a shehechiyanu if we eat a fruit that we haven't had for a long time?
Yes, yes.
How long is it, like before you, I mean, like, is it if you haven't eaten it in a year?
If it's a fruit of that year and you haven't yet had it, it's a fruit that grew in that year. Okay.
Any kind of fruit or any specific fruit?
I think on all fruits we make it. The pasuk in Devarim is speaking about going into battle. And it says there, when you lay a siege to a city, wage war for a long time against it, capture it, do not destroy its trees. Right? For from it you will eat. You should not cut it down. For is a tree of the field then a man? Meaning, right, it seems to be a rhetorical question. Right? Ki adam eitz hasadeh? Is the tree like a person? Lavon mifnecha b'matzor, who will come against you in the siege? Meaning, I understand you going to battle against people, right? You have to do that sometimes, but the trees? So is the tree of the field then a man? But the pasuk says, Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. That wording seems to indicate that in certain ways, a person is like the eitz hasadeh. And the Medrash says, Peter of Elazar says, Adam nimshal le'etz. Man is compared to be like a tree. In what way? So, source number 14. Kemosha ilan oseh perot tovot. Just as a tree bears good fruit, kach maaseyim heim peroteim. So to the actions of a person are that person's fruit. The Maharal explains in a very typical Maharal manner. Man is called a tree of the field, as the verse says, for man is a tree of the field. But really he is an upside down tree. We are like a tree, meaning you look at a tree and there is the revealed part of the tree, but in fact, where is it drawing all of its sustenance from? Hidden, under the ground. You don't see where it's drawing its sustenance from. You just see the result of that sustenance. A man is the same thing like the tree, but upside down. For a tree's roots are in the ground below, while man's roots are above. His soul is the source of his being, and it exists, it's rooted where? In the Olam HaRuchani, in the spiritual world. Man's hands are his branches. His legs, the branches off of those branches, while his body is the trunk. For a tree's sustenance is from the ground, while man's sustenance is from heaven. Beautiful, beautiful concepts. Let us examine, 16, the comparison between man and trees in order to understand the message on Tu B'Shvat for humankind. The tree goes through cycles in its life. Heavy laden tree of summer empties itself of fruit in the autumn, slowly loses its leaves one by one. By wintertime, the tree stands shorn of its previous glory. For all purposes, it appears to have died. But then comes Tu B'Shvat. In the midst of the cold winter days, when all vegetation seems frozen or dead, the sap starts to flow beneath the surface, rising slowly from the roots in the soil, pushing its way up, pumping new life into the outstretched branches that reach towards the heaven. In life, we too go through cycles of growth. Periods of renewal and growth may alternate with times of stagnation or dormancy. Shlomo Volbe recites that this cycle is part of man's nature. He adds that a person must not become disillusioned when spiritual growth seems halted. The low period will usually be followed by a high period that will yield new opportunities for growth. We too go through our cycles. That is the message of Tu B'Shvat. Even when we feel lethargic and a rut, seem to have lost the drive to achieve, do not despair. Just as winter is an annual hiatus in the life cycle of trees, so bouts of lethargy and unproductivity are necessary phases in the human cycle. Just with the coming of spring, life-giving sap moves imperceptibly through the trees to the branches stretch of the sky, so too will we have renewed energy from deep within as long as we set our goal heavenward. Now it's interesting. The bracha for our parnasah, well, the blessing for rain. Let's go that way. The blessing for rain that we add in the winter, mashiv haruach, umered hageshem, Rashi, the mention of rain, is in the blessing of tchiyat hametim. Tchiyat hametim is literally the resuscitation of the dead, that the ultimate reward will be with a reunion of body and soul. And there are those that explain that, yes, this cycle that we see of the tree, that is the cycle that a human being goes through. We go through our young years, we go through our productivity, our children, and then we start to lose some of that koach. The hair is no longer blonde. I still call this blonde, but it's a stretch, right? And we start to weaken. We start to diminish, and I believe the Gemara points out that the whole cycle of the trees, that is our before our eyes manifestation of the concept of Tchiyas HaMesim. That we get older, but then there is that rejuvenation that will ultimately come at the end of days. Number 17 is very, very interesting. Mankind, we're called B'nai Adam, the sons of Adam. Well, why was Adam called Adam? Adam?
Adama.
He
Earth.
came from the Adamah.
Earth.
He came from the earth. But the verses tell us that he was a soul from above and a body from the earth. So if we're going to focus on one aspect of Adam, of mankind, why are we calling him earth? We should call him
Shemayim.
heavens, soul, breath of life. Right? A Sephardic mother calls her child, Bo'ena nishamala. Right? My little neshama. Neshama shali. Right? So why is mankind called by the earth as opposed to being called by the soul?
Well, we can't know for sure, but Hashem placed
Well, for one thing,
Adam on the earth to execute whatever was the joint mission and to strengthen the neshama that way. So maybe the context of
So it's in order to strengthen that, okay. Ida, what did you want to say?
oh, our feet are planted on the earth symbolically so that we reach upward towards the heaven.
Okay, to use that as a launch, okay. Okay, any other ideas out there? Yes, Ilana.
Maybe just to for Adam to be cognizant of the cycle of life, that that's where we all end up.
Okay, as a constant reminder to utilize our time, right? Because ultimately, the earth reclaims that which is.
Right,
Interesting.
right.
So source number 17 actually is paraphrasing the answer that the Maharal gives to this question. A tree is connected to the ground and to the beautiful fruit. It takes raw material from the dirt and creates a most outstanding product. In the same way, human beings take physical objects in this world and transform them into spiritual objects, mitzvot. Just in the natural world, the action begins at this point, so too in the metaphysical world, Jews who have been working themselves since Rosh Hashanah can begin to feel and internalize the results, the effect of the mitzvot. It takes a long time until a tree grows to maturity. Much investment and time and effort are needed to produce the beautiful fruit. Similarly, for man to reach its fruition, it also takes a lot of effort and time. Now it is winter, the tree seems to be dead, but God introduces nitrogen and other elements needed to regenerate it. We too have low periods in life when we seem to be dead. We also have the necessary ingredients: Torah, mitzvot, instructions, guidance, to revitalize and invigorate us. So the Maharal says, the Adamah, the earth, is all about transformation. And that is the most important aspect of who we are. The soul is the spiritual component, God-given, holy, holy, holy. That's not what we work on. Our task is on transformation, on taking the physical self, the physical world, and transforming it. The famous verse in Mishlei that we sing every Shabbat as we return the Torah to the Ark is Eitz Chaim Hi Lamachazikim Ba V'Tomcheha Me'ushar. It, the Torah, is a tree of life for those who grasp it, and those who support it are praised. So what does that mean, that the Torah is this tree of life?
Those instructions for transforming us from physical to spiritual are in there.
Okay.
By this comparison, it's the tree of life.
Okay. That is something that allows us to transform. That's how we access that which will transform our physical to the spiritual. Right? Every religion needs to have its revelation narrative of how we know what it is that God wants us to do. Of course, Judaism is the only religion which had a national revelation. Right? Because I can tell you I can tell you I had a dream last night, I'm starting a new religion, this is what I'm supposed to do. Right? Maybe I can convince you, probably I can't. Right? But I can't convince you what you heard last night. What you heard when you were assembled by the mountain. Judaism is the only religion that claims a national revelation, and that's a claim that can't be made. Right? I can claim what I experienced, but I can't tell you what you experienced unless you experienced it. Okay? And it is because of that that we say, all the religions that look towards this replacement of the Jews, of the new Israel, so our clear understanding from the Torah is, unless God tells us that things have changed, then the rules haven't changed. Right? That's very simple. If God would choose a national revelation to give us the Torah, if the Torah is becoming defunct, then God would need to let us know that on a national level. Eitz Chaim, the Torah is a tree of life, that through that we can learn how to be transformative and how to lead a life that is transformative.
But it's hard. It's not a simple matter because we can't predict the future. So we only know what we are now. And all of a sudden, like I just had an experience where I changed to a certain extent, my eyes and things. And I'm not ready for it in a way. I'm not ready for it. Okay, I'm patient, fine. But I know there's a transformation going on. And it's hard. It's very hard to know that.
Yeah. It's hard to know that, it's hard to accept that, it's hard
Yes,
to...
it's hard to know that.
Yeah.
It's also most hard to know that it's for the better.
Yeah.
I think that's very difficult to know
Yeah.
it's making each of us better physically, spiritually, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I find that this
Yeah.
particular period of
I
my
think
life.
that's what you all struggle with.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Ilana?
I didn't hear what she said that caused her to have the revelation. Did you say what changed in your life?
I'm not gonna go into
Oh,
details,
okay.
but there has been changes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure what
It
she said.
doesn't matter, because each one is different.
No, I thought you said.
Everyone has their own
We all have...
menu.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone has
We
their
all
own
have the menu that is ordered for us,
Yeah,
and then we decide how to,
right, but it surprises you.
It's not a menu.
how to
you
play
don't
the
get to
cards.
choose.
I'm sorry?
It's not a menu, you don't
You're
get
not
to choose.
choosing from it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like to
That's
compare it
true.
to the
Right.
cards that are dealt, and you decide how to play the hand.
know when to hold them. So
Yeah.
what were you saying about, just a minute ago, about groups that were trying to, something about groups that were trying to?
No,